border between the United States and Canada is one of the strangest borders in the world.
So, I'm proving that I can be in two countries at the same time. I'm in Canada. I'm in America. As this babe gets said, as you can see. And in two countries at the same time. I'm in Canada. I'm in the U.S. I'm in Canada. I'm in the U.S.
I started with a simple question. It was a question that felt almost absurd to ask in this day and age. How can a border, a line that separates two powerful nations, be almost invisible? We hear endless stories about walls. We see images of high fences and stern-faced guards. The narrative is one of control, of security, of keeping people in their designated places. So the idea of a border you could accidentally stumble over seemed like a myth, a relic from a time long past. The place I was headed for was Darby Line, Vermont. It shares a border with Stansted, Quebec. The drive north felt like a journey back in time. As I left the bustling highways of the lower states behind, the landscape began to change. Small towns appeared and then vanished in my rearview mirror, each one a collection of white-steepled churches and clapboard houses. There were no signs of the border for hours, no checkpoints, no warnings, just the serene, rolling hills of Vermont. The radio stations started to fade, replaced by French-language broadcasts from across the border. When I finally rolled into Darby Line, it was smaller and quieter than I had imagined. The town felt sleepy, nestled in a valley and surrounded by green hills. The main street, Canusa Avenue, was just a quiet road lined with modest homes and a few small businesses. It was only when I noticed the different license plates on the cars that the reality of my location began to sink in. My first stop had to be the Haskell Free Library and Opera House. It is the town's most famous landmark, and for good reason. The building itself is a handsome, solid structure of brick and granite, built at the turn of the 20th century. It was intentionally constructed to straddle the border as a symbol of friendship between the two communities. The front door is in the United States, but as you walk inside you cross an international boundary. A thick black line painted on the floor of the reading room marks the exact location of the border. It runs diagonally across the room, passing under chairs and reading tables. It felt both profound and wonderfully ordinary. Children were quietly reading books, oblivious to the geopolitical significance of the floor beneath them. A librarian, a woman with a kind and patient smile, told me that families from both sides of the border use the library. They are binational. She explained that as long as you enter through the American door and leave through the same door, you are fine. You can wander freely into the Canadian side of the building without going through customs. I spent the day simply watching. I found a bench on the American side of the street, directly facing the invisible line. Life unfolded at a slow, unhurried pace. A group of teenagers on bicycles rode past, laughing and chatting. They swerved playfully back and forth, crossing from the U.S. to Canada and back again with a casualness that was astonishing to me. Later in the afternoon, a car with Quebec plates pulled up on the Canadian side. An elderly woman got out and walked to the edge of the road. A few moments later, another car, this one with Vermont plates, arrived on the American side. They couldn't cross, not legally, so they stood on their respective sides of the street about 20 feet apart and talked. The little girl waved excitedly at the older woman, who I presumed was her grandmother. As evening approached, the town grew even quieter. The setting sun cast long shadows across Canusa Avenue. The streetlights flickered on, some powered by Hydro-Quebec, others by Green Mountain Power. I saw a couple holding hands, strolling along the American sidewalk. They paused at the line of flower pots, looked across to the quiet houses on the Canadian side, and then continued on their way. I approached a man named John, who was carefully trimming the hedges in front of his well-kept house on the Vermont side. He appeared to be in his late 60s with a friendly, slightly weathered face that hinted at years spent outdoors. "Lived here my whole life," he told me, leaning on his shears for support. "That line? We don't even see it most of the time, to be honest with you. It's just a line on a map. My best friend growing up lived right over there," he said, pointing with his shears towards a house just across the border in Stansted. He spoke of a time, a more innocent time before the security clampdown that followed the events of 9/11, when things were considerably more relaxed and informal. "Well, things have certainly changed," he admitted with a sigh. "The Border Patrol presence is around a lot more frequently than they used to be, that's for sure. But for us, the folks who actually live here, we still trust each other implicitly. The real problem isn't the people from Stansted. They're our neighbors. It's the strangers, the people who don't understand the unique way things work in this community. Later that day, I had the pleasure of speaking with a young woman named Chloe, who was visiting her aunt on the Quebec side of the border. Although she grew up in Montreal, she had been coming to Stansted every summer since she was a little child. "For me, this place is truly magical," she said, her English lightly accented with a soft, melodic French cadence. "It feels like a secret, a hidden gem. It reminds you that at the end of the day we are all just people, connected by our shared humanity, you know? The line is man-made, an artificial construct. It's not real, not in the same fundamental way that a river or a mountain is undeniably real." The term unsecure sounds alarming. It conjures images of chaos, of a complete lack of control. But here in Darby Line, the word has a different meaning. The border is considered unsecure not because it's a hotbed of criminal activity, but because of its physical nature. It lacks the imposing infrastructure that has become synonymous with modern border security. The vulnerability of this border is rooted in its history. When the line was first drawn in the 18th century, it was an abstract concept. It cut through farms, forests, and eventually, towns that grew up around it. For generations, people and goods moved freely. The two communities of Darby Line and Stansted effectively grew into one. They shared fire departments, water supplies, and families. It was only in the 21st century, particularly after the September 11th attacks, that this historic openness became a modern security concern for federal agencies. They used thermal imaging cameras, motion detectors buried in the ground, and regular patrols to monitor the invisible line. So, while the border may look open to the naked eye, it is being watched. I spoke to the owner of a small general store on the Vermont side, a hub of local life. She told me that the locals are the first line of defense, the eyes and ears of this unique border community. "We know everyone here," she said, carefully arranging newspapers on a rack. "We notice when something is out of place. If we see a strange car with out-of-state plates driving slowly up and down the line, or people we don't recognize walking in the woods at night, especially acting suspiciously, we call the Border Patrol. We have to. It's our responsibility to report anything that seems amiss. We want to protect our way of life, and that means helping them do their job. It's a partnership, really. This sense of shared responsibility is crucial for maintaining the delicate balance. The community understands that their unique freedom depends on their cooperation and willingness to participate in keeping their homes safe. However, this partnership is not without its strains and complexities. Some residents feel a sense of being constantly watched, not just by the authorities but by each other. The trust that once defined the community is now tinged with a duty to be vigilant, creating a subtle tension. The risks are real and cannot be ignored. There have been documented cases of human smuggling and drug trafficking in the area, highlighting the vulnerabilities of this open border. People have been caught attempting to cross through the woods or even through the local library, a stark reminder of the challenges they face. For the residents, each incident is a blow to their community's identity, chipping away at their sense of security. They worry that one day, a serious event will force the government to build a physical barrier, permanently altering the landscape and destroying the character of their town forever. Leaving Darby Line, my initial question felt both answered and even more complex than before. I had found a U.S. border crossing that was, by any physical measure, remarkably unsecure. A place where the line between two nations is quite literally marked by flower pots and a simple strip of paint on a library floor. It challenged my preconceived notions of what a border should be. I saw with my own eyes that such a place could exist, not as some far-fetched myth or utopian dream, but as a living, breathing, functioning community. It was a testament to a different era, a holdover from a time when the relationship between the United States and Canada was defined more by friendship, mutual respect, and shared values than by fear and division. But I also quickly learned that this apparent openness is not as simple or naive as it initially appears. It is certainly not an oversight or an accident. It is in fact a carefully managed system, a delicate and ongoing dance between trust and technology, community and control, all working in concert. The residents of Darby Line and Stansted are not living in a state of blissful ignorance or turning a blind eye to potential risks. Quite the contrary, they are active participants in their own security and well-being, their awareness and vigilance a key component in maintaining the peace and tranquility they so clearly cherish. My visit left me with a sense of profound ambivalence and a lot to think about. On one hand, I was undeniably charmed by the town's seemingly effortless rejection of imposing physical barriers. It felt like a genuinely hopeful model for how neighboring countries can coexist peacefully and respectfully. It was a powerful and poignant reminder that borders are, at their core, human constructs, and that the lines we draw on maps do not necessarily have to become insurmountable walls in our hearts and minds. Yet, I couldn't shake the persistent feeling that this unique place is also inherently fragile and vulnerable. How long can a border built so heavily on trust and mutual understanding truly survive and thrive in an increasingly complex age of suspicion and global uncertainty? I left not with a neat and tidy conclusion, but with a lingering sense of wonder, coupled with a definite touch of melancholy. I had seen a border that was, remarkably, more of a seam than a wall, and I sincerely hoped, for the sake of the people who call it home, that it could somehow remain that way for generations to come.